Welcome to the Love, Sex, and Leadership podcast, where you can discover simple tantric teachings to embody your true power, awaken your soul's wisdom, and live an inspired life as a natural, intuitive, and heart-centered leader. Hello, everyone.
Hey, hello.
I'm here with my dear friend Malaika. We're going to, in this edition of Conversations with Queens, I'm really enjoying this whole podcast series. It's quite fun having amazing conversations with very powerful women stepping in and being queens in this world. And this whole conversation today is really about self-love and learning how and knowing how to love this body temple. And I think out of the whole human experience, the journey of self-love, it's always the one I always go back to. It's like, if I'm not loving myself, like, things are pretty hard to get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the mess we're in the world right now. I think it's, if we cultivated a culture that was based in self-love, we wouldn't be in half the mess that we're in right now, and that's what we're all coming back to. So
absolutely. And so I know for you, you've been in this field of transformation, of dance, of and I love seeing you on the dance floor as well as a DJ. Like every time I feel you in this community here in Ubud, but also in the world, we've seen each other a number of times. I just feel this exuding essence of love and care, and also like just really being in your queendom, and very with a lot of integrity and clarity. It's just every time I felt you through the years in our interactions, and like there's a place of non-judgment that meets an individual where they are without being too overpowering, but really just meeting them with that compassionate, loving part. And I love that you're a mother and a grandmother, and you bring that wisdom into interaction. So it's a joy to have this dialogue with you today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here and be part of this, because it's really exciting. And I think the more we share these wisdoms and knowledge for the up and coming next generations, then and the better world it is going to be for my grandchildren and our children's children. That's what it's always all about. So.
Absolutely. And so Malaika will be sharing in the Integrated Feminine Symposium, I believe, your workshops on the Wild Woman Awakening. And
the Wild Woman Awakening.
We won't go too much into that today, because that's going to be for her workshop offering of the symposium. But if you want to find out more about that throughout this talk, just go to the integratedfeminine.com. You can comment below or send me a message, and we can give you a coupon code as well to support you and showing up. And but today let's talk about self-love. So what is self-love? People that are like, okay, I've heard this concept, self-love. What does this even mean?
I was thinking about it this morning. I was bathing my cat, giving my cat a bath, which he didn't really enjoy so much, but just this for me, this concept of the wild woman for me is the concept of coming back to our authentic and natural self. So having had children and having small children in my life again with my grandchildren around, you watch children and they just naturally are in their bodies, and they're so authentic in their expression. One minute they're laughing, the next minute they're crying, the next minute they're scratching their genitals or playing with them, and there's no shame there. There's just an absolute naturalness in their bodies. And then somewhere through the conditioning of the human being, whether it comes from it comes from our parents, it comes from society, it comes from our teachers, it comes from the religion we're born into, all these things, they teach us, this is good and this is bad, this is right and this is wrong. And suddenly these natural impulses that we all feel as a human animal, that really this physical body we're part of all of nature, becomes shamed and goes into the shadows, and we hate and loathe those parts of ourselves. So I feel that the owning of those natural parts of ourselves is a practice of cultivation that, for me, it's always this reminder that I am not this body, but I can't have this experience. I couldn't be here in Bali, eating beautiful papayas and touching you and making love if I didn't have it, So it's like, to love my piece of the real estate, and that's what I really teach people, is to love your piece of real estate. That's the only thing really you have control over, in this world that we're living in, that our consciousness is existing inside this physical form, And what an absolute gift and miracle it is to have this, you know, like it, you know, just even sort of looking at the mathematics of it, of how this could all be possible, you know, to have consciousness and have a human body. That to me is like, I can wake up every day and just be excited about that miracle of like, wow, you know, another day to experience all this. And so, you know, like a lot of the yogic practices, which are practicing this detachment in some ways, you know, because they're all kind of focused on this ascension going up. I love the tantric path, which is more the descension of going into the body and finding the codes for evolution and the codes for enlightenment in the body. And that's what I really, you know, love to teach and love to embody and you know, and practice. And I feel like since we've gone through the Industrial Revolution, there's been so much propaganda to, especially, I mean, it affects men as well, but it really affects women and young girls, that they're not good enough. Because people, when they feel good enough about themselves, they're not going to be going spending however much it costs to have a boob job. They're not going to be going and spending however much it costs to go and have a you know, a designer gina. They're not going to go and spend the money to, you know, go and Botox their whole face, or, you know, all these things that are industries now that are capitalizing on people not feeling good about their piece of real estate. And, you know, 90% of those people who do a lot of those stuff to themselves, they haven't really found the happiness. They're not, the self-love, you know, like, oh, now I look like so beautiful, is still not there. It's because it's something that we need to strip away the conditioning, bust through the conditioning to come back to our original essence. You know, and for me, I've spent a lot of time with indigenous people, and, you know, and I lived in Africa for a whole year, and in a village with my 2 children when they were very young. And it was just like one of the most exquisite, amazing adventures of my life to be in this African village. We lived in a hut. I had to go to the well to get my water, you know, and there was no mirrors. And funnily enough, I had shaved my hair before I had left Australia. And then we had traveled around through Asia, and then we got to Africa, and so my hair was like growing in Africa, but we were in this African village with no mirrors.
Wow.
And it was amazing because, you know, it was back in the day, like pre-digital, that we didn't have cameras and phones. We had like film, you know, cameras with film, and you had to develop the photos after. And when I see the photos of me in Africa with this like Ronald McDonald hairdo, you know, and I felt great because I had no mirrors, you know. I was like to my partner, why didn't you tell me to put on a scarf or something? I had this like little afro, you know, that grew out with my hair, you know, really curly. But it taught me that, you know, this constant, you know, judging ourselves by what we see, and then we've had images implanted into our consciousness, you know, billboards, magazines, TV, movies, you know, it's just constantly been bombarded of this is what's good and this, you know. And whereas like in these indigenous places where I've spent time, where there's like none of that, it's all about the feeling, you know, it's all about how you feel about yourself, and you know, finding that joy and joy de vivre inside yourself, where you can just like bound out of bed and have that same kind of energy that you had when you were a little kid. So. And
so, to someone listening, and I love so many of the pieces you're seeing, especially what you said about the design agina. It's perfect. It's so accurate.
Oh my God! Like you know, I watched a documentary on this young girl who was 18 years old, going in for you know, her labia to be cut and trimmed. You know, and I mean, we were all like, you know, like so incredibly painful to watch. And I think a lot of that has come about. One, it's the industry that's making $1 billion from it.
Of course.
And two, because of the pornography industry, which, you know, shows one type of vagina, and a lot of time it's photoshopped, and, you know, then and also the waxing, you know, that now we have. You know, we see it a lot more than we used to. So, you know, it's like before it was just like, yeah, that's just my vagina, you know, that's what mine looks like, that's what yours looks like, you know, we didn't really, like guys, you more see your genitals and, you know, compare them or whatever. For girls, it was just, you know, you didn't really see it so much, but now we're seeing so much more of it. And so this thing of, for young girls, it's one more thing of like, oh, mine doesn't look like that. And, you know, then comes to the solution. Well, we have, you know, this new operation that can make you look like everybody else's. And I just, like, there's so many nerve endings that get cut. And, you know, it's the same with the breasts. It's like, you know, when I've lived in indigenous cultures where it's perfectly normal to be bare-breasted, like even here in Bali, only, you know, 10 years ago, women were just all bare-breasted. You'd see them all naked in the streams, just, you know, washing and bare-breasted, and the women walking around. They used to go to temple bare-breasted, and, you know, and the breasts, like Tahiti, when I was in Tahiti, the women are beautiful and bare-breasted, brown, beautiful bodies. And, you know, this is the part of the female body that is the, you know, behind the breasts is the radiant, positive pole of the feminine heart. And this is what I feel the world is longing for, aching for, starving for, you know, is this radiance of the feminine heart. And the breasts, they represent like this mammillary, you know, our mammal part of ourselves, of like, they're filled with milk, you know, milk, the sweetness of mother's milk. You know, that's what they're there for, you know, is to feed. And all of humanity, you know, has suckled at the breast of the woman. And then it became, you know, when it became like hidden and tucked away, it's like now they're getting bigger and bigger underneath the veil, you know, like ridiculously, you know, oversized. And yet you still can't like just be seeing the natural beauty of it, and it becomes so sexualized. And, you know, even people saying, you know, oh, breastfeeding, you're not allowed to, you know, be seen breastfeeding as vulgar or something like that, but it's okay to wear, you know, a little triangle on these tits that are out to here, you know, that's okay. And it's like, what have we done, you know, instead of like just coming back to this naturalization and desexualization of just, you know, for women to, we are sexual, we're like a flower, you know, we're flowers, women are flowers, and so you don't need to do anything, you know, you just need to be. It's right, you know, like the rose doesn't, you know, shove itself in your face going, smell me, you know, you know, and open its petals. It's just, you know, it just naturally opens when it opens. Its fragrance naturally exudes when it exudes, and you are naturally attracted to it because it's beautiful. It's beautiful, you know. And so I use that metaphor a lot with my women's work because, you know, this industry and living in a patriarchy that has pitted women against each other and the jealousy and all this sort of stuff, it has made women not feel good about the flower that they are. And each one is unique, and just the same as if I had a, you know, orange daffodil, you know, and if that daffodil was like, geez, I really wish I was a red rose. Well, its blueprint is it's a daffodil. It's going to be an orange daffodil, and it does that with all its full poweredness, you know. It doesn't like hide itself away and try and dye itself at the ends red, you know, to be a bit of a red rose when, you know, it really wants to be a red rose, but it's a daffodil. It's like, no, it just is itself. And so the more I feel women can own their flower, you know, and their flowering, you know, that everyone's opening and blossoming, and you can't force that to happen. It's just, it's all happening, you know, organically. We're all in this process of life together. And that self-love piece is so key, you know, to own your own fragrance, to own your own uniqueness, to own your own beauty, and to know that it's all so temporary, you know. It's like, this too shall pass, you know. It's you know, so the attachment to the physical body is just like, no, just really love and honor it as a temple, you know, that can take you, has the potential to take you to these incredible altered states of being where you experience expanded states of reality through the body, you know, while being in the body. And the marriage of then matter and the unmanifested world is like, that's when the real magic can happen, you know.
I love so much what you're sharing, and you know, especially this piece of just a being knowing its natural inherent beauty, And, you know, I love this analogy of like an acorn. It's like an acorn inside that little seed has a capacity to be a mighty oak, and yet the seed inside of that is the flowering. And, you know, I think that can understand in the mind, we can understand it philosophically, but yet still there's so much of this culture that's trying to, you know, gain revenue and gain income and all of the stuff around comparison. So to like that 18-year-old girl, or to like, I look at my niece and nephew and they're 16 and 18, and like they're just being, it'd be crazy to grow up now with social media and all these different pieces and just being inundated with constant body comparison. So what would it like, what would you say to some of them to remember that naturalness and not to not compare to, it's like we can't not do something that's happening all around us, but to come back into that naturalness and to like remember their own beauty and their own uniqueness?
Come to Bali and come on retreat with me.
Very straightforward.
Spend, you know, because what I love about being here is to be able to take people into nature. And, you know, you're using the metaphor of the acorn, you know, I use the metaphor with the seeds as well. And, you know, we plant those seeds because it's like, the acorn has the potential to turn into the oak tree, but if it's not given the right conditions, it remains a seed. You know, it will never, you know, it has to be given the right conditions. So it's the same with our human potential. We all have a seed of light inside of us, you know, and we all have that naturalness to come back to, and that, you know, expanded wise consciousness to come into. But if we're not given the right conditions, it never germinates, you know, and then as we get older, you know, just like those seeds, it starts to lose the viability until it dies, you know, without ever reaching its full potential. So giving, like for me as a human being, I die if I don't get my time in nature. And I feel that, you know, again, through the patriarchy, through the, you know, severing of our connection to the earth and to our pagan rituals and ceremonies that allowed us to go into these altered states of consciousness, which we as a human being, we've evolved over, you know, millions and millions of years to get to where we are now. And there's certain things in our biology that we long to experience. And so by attending those kinds of rituals and those kinds of things, we allow ourselves to drop into that part of ourselves. And even if it's, you know, like if you're young and living in the world, even going out into nature and just spending time, you know, by a flowing stream or a powering waterfall, or sit with a giant tree and feel the energy and feel that you are not separate from that, you know. And so just the same as you would look at, you know, this incredible, crooked, gnarled, amazing tree, you would not go, oh, that's not perfect. Oh, it should be straighter on this side. Oh, I wish it was a little, it's like, no, you accept it. So in that accepting of the nature, come back again and again, pulling it in to accept your own true nature. You know, your own nature is that, it's the same. And the flowing of the stream, you know, it's like, you know, I'm starting to get these veins like my grandma. My grandson was like playing with them the other day, and it's like, you know, they're just like rivers. It's like, you know, our body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. You know, we are 75% to 80% water. The planet is 75 to 80% water. You know, our tears are exactly the same as the ocean. You know, the salt is in the ocean, our tears are the same. The microminerals in the earth, we have the same microminerals in our body, you know. So I always come back to her being Gaia as my greatest teacher, as my greatest metaphor for how to come back into balance. We don't need to look further than, you know, our own backyards and just, you know, get your face down there in the dirt and have a good smell of it, and, you know, get your hands in the earth and you get the, you know, feel that, you know. And it's sensual. For me, it's like, it's a sensual, the earth is just constantly making love, you know. It's like all of this blossoming and blooming and beauty is all because creatures are just constantly making love, you know. Like the sound even of the cicadas, you know, we here in Bali, we have these cicadas, and I know in Canada where I grew up, when I was young, we used to go up to the lake, and the cicadas in the summertime, because, you know, that high pitched frequency is just like so intense, because they spend 9 months in the ground in the process of like a larval stage. They come out of the earth and they have 24 hours to find a new mate. So that song that they're singing is just, here I am, baby, come and get me, we got 24 hours, to keep this cycle in. And that frequency for us as humans, if we tune in, and like I love doing meditations and just focusing on that sound, that frequency, and it awakens in me of like, yeah, this is natural, this is normal, this is like so good, and I think like what we're seeing in the world is because we've tried through our religions and conditioning and everything to repress the lower 3 chakras, and these primal urges of us as a human animal, and be all spiritual up here, but like forget that we have this animal part nature to us. We've created this dark shadow because it's the most potent and powerful energy we have on the planet, and you can't get rid of energy. We can't get rid of that. It's so it just goes deeper and deeper into the shadows. And so for me, seeing this expose of what's going on with the pedophilia and things like this, you don't get further away from like what our true nature is. We're supposed to take care of the children, we're supposed to take care of and watch them grow and celebrate their beauty, not take advantage of their innocence and their sweetness. And for me, that just is like the deepest shadow of our sexuality that is being exposed, because we've tried to repress this natural energy instead of owning it. And that's part of the self-love piece, is just saying, I'm a human being with all of this inside of me, the killer instinct of the animal, the lion, the protector, the fierce protector mother that's going to protect her cubs or her turf, territorial. And then we've been given this awareness, this self-awareness that other creatures don't really have. Like an elephant probably doesn't, question whether it's an elephant or whether it's, am I a male elephant or transgender? Maybe I should change my, my identity crisis. This is like, it just is, it just is. Whereas human beings, we have this self-awareness piece, which I feel, through the self-love, we can come into tune with this self-awareness of like, who am I? Keep asking that question, who am I really? And then, without ever trying to answer the question, we come to this realization that, it's all just Maya, it's all just a game, and this body is just in the game. It's part of the manifested world, but it's not the truth of who we are. So how do we enjoy it? How do we be in gratitude, like be in deep gratitude for being given this body? So I always do practices and self-practices that are like, oh, thank you so much, because you work so hard and you do so much, and you're digesting my papaya I ate from my tree that I planted this morning, and you're doing all these things while I'm doing all these other things, and you just keep me going and keep me alive so I can keep on experiencing life, keep on sharing my gifts, keep on meeting beautiful people. And that it's a way for me, it's been my path to stay in a state of gratitude. And I really did learn that in Africa. Like, so many lessons I learned from my times that I spent there. I had like a 17-year love affair with Africa, and teaching African dance, and and the way they play with their sexuality and the sex, it's so much fun. Like, it's just so playful and joyful, and there's just like in the village, it's just like this playful, joyful thing that everybody does and knows about, and there's no shame or guilt or whatever. It's just like, yeah, that's what we do, and there's owning it. There's an ownership, so it's like connected to their lingam, but they're not, the in-between part is missing, and this connection of the heart is missing, which really is a tactile feeling, connecting to all of our body, like feeling all of it. So yes, we can use this technology to communicate and reach, so many people. I mean, here we are in Bali, and maybe you're in California, or New York, or Australia, or China, or Japan, or wherever, on the planet. I mean, it is pretty a unique time in history where we can communicate on this medium like that, but it's got huge potential for being taken advantage of, that we have to use our self-awareness then to catch ourselves, especially with going into the addiction. So one of the things I got told by my guidance, higher guidance, was about 11 years ago. I was teaching at the Tantra Festival in Thailand, and I was hosting a week-long men and women's retreat called The Ultimate Journey, and the Ultimate Journey is like 12 inches. It's from here to here.
I love
Takes
that.
a whole lifetime to get there sometimes, but it's that's the ultimate journey. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was receiving this download about the powers that be were going to be using. There were impulses coming from the grand central sun to the earth to awaken our consciousness, and that this is how our consciousness evolves. And that's why you don't find in the earth, like in archaeology, you don't find it in the bones, like, the transition that we've made as hominids, you don't find these transitions in archaeology. There's like gaps, and suddenly we look different, and the brain's different, because it's coming from these explosions. What is an explosion on the sun? It's a nuclear. Sun is a nuclear reactor. So what happens to a woman if she's too close to a nuclear explosion and she's pregnant? The baby is born deformed, right? Because it's too close. The mutation of the DNA happens too close. But these nuclear waves that come, comes from so far away, light years away, into our field, and it shifts and changes the consciousness. And as the consciousness changes, the physical form starts to evolve and change as well. Like our jaws are smaller because we're not tearing into, meat and eating with our hand. It's like things start to evolve and change. So I was told that as these impulses were coming at this particular time right now, the powers that do not want us to evolve would use our sexual energy to keep us locked down in third-dimensional reality. Because if you have an addiction, you're stuck in third-dimensional reality. And that can be addiction to sugar, it can be addiction to our phones, it can be addiction to chemical substances, it can be addiction to porn, it can be, there's many, many addictions. Like they've used the best of the minds to, study the human being, not to better us, but to control and manipulate us. Like they know every nuance of every point on the tongue of how many, times a child needs to have this type of sugar or chemical for it to be an addict to that, and then they place it on the supermarket at this level, and then the poor mother trying to shop with this little addict, basically, that sees all that stuff. I want it, hey, just give it to them, and so addiction keeps us locked down. And so our work, I feel, is to be the one who we are in control of our own addictions, and reclaiming the naturalness of our sexuality without going into the addiction of it, so that we then bring that higher consciousness of what our sexuality can actually be used for healing. The body can use to heal traumas from the past. I mean, I'm sure as a doing this work, that how powerful it can be to use that energy for healing, and to use that energy for awakening our consciousness, not for making us into desire slaves, where then we just become another addiction and we're stuck in that loop. And then funnily enough, that retreat, I do a lot of movement in my retreats, and I'm all about embodiment and dance and a lot of moving practices. And I turned up and I had a guy who had no legs. He had an accident where was a war veteran and had lost both his legs, and a woman who was missing one of her leg and half of her other foot. So, throwing the dance out the window and just kind of going, okay, how are we going to do, and it was really, really potent. It was so powerful. It was such a gift for me as a facilitator, because the men had to get down, because wearing her prosthetic leg really caused her a lot of pain. So she, I said, just take it off then, if it's hurting you, like, that's the other thing. It's like, if things aren't comfortable, like take it off. Yeah, don't do it, So she took it off, which meant then she was sitting down on the ground. And so the men had to come down to her to share with her. And the heart opening, like, she was such an open and beautiful woman. And she had owned her beauty. It didn't matter. She was missing a leg, She had owned her beauty, and she was so beautiful. Like, her heart was so beautiful that every man cried when they had to come and, like, be with her, and every woman cried when they had to come and be with this man. And the brothers too, we had a section with the brothers and the women working together, and they had to pick him up. And it was like this moment when the men, like, reached down and grabbed their brother, and he was part of the circle. And there's this man with, like, no legs in the circle from war, like, his legs are missing from war. It's like, this is the power of love, and this is the power of war.
Yeah.
And like, if we want to stop it on this planet, we have to own all of it. We got to own all of our shadows. We got to own all our sexuality. We got to own all of our shadow parts that we don't like about ourselves, because if we don't love ourselves, don't expect someone else to love you. Don't expect the world to reflect love back to you, because we are just in a hologram. We're seeing what is reflected back to us. So the more we own that part of ourselves, which 9 out of 10 times with my clients, it's the inner child.
Of course.
The inner child, if for those of you who have children, if you don't tend to them, they wreak havoc in the background until they get your attention, and when you give them, your attention, and what is it that you need, what is it that you want. Maybe they don't feel safe, maybe they don't feel loved, maybe they didn't get told as children, that they were beautiful just as they are. Maybe they weren't encouraged to follow their dreams, whatever that is. But now as the adult, you can do that for the little one. So you can pick that little him or her up and give them everything they need, tell them they're beautiful, and then their joy kicks in, and they're like, yeah, let's go and dance in the rain, and let's go and, make friends with people, and, it's like, usually that's what opens up. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I hear you sharing that I love is, like, utilizing the world as this reflective reality, to love all the things that we're seeing on the outside, and that, for me, I feel like is one of the biggest catalysts to actually learning self-love, because I used to love being in relationship and giving all of my love to her, and I have all the love I want to give to her, but then actually inside there was a part of me that was feeling unnourished and unloved, because I just wanted to love everyone. I wanted to give and give and give, but to actually, like, receive and to receive love. I know in a male body, like, that's been a challenging place, and that has been one of the biggest things with self-love, is to, like, wow, to see that person I'm judging, where can I love that part inside of me? And that person that I'm putting on a pedestal, where can I love that part inside of me? And, like, so loving it here so that the actual heart begins to open. And I love this analogy you put between the heart and there. And, what I often share as a background as a navigator in operating ships, it's like on a ship you have a co-navigator and a navigator. And for most people, the mind is the navigator, and so we're shifting this dynamic so the heart becomes a navigator. The mind is this assimilating information machine that can actually support the heart to open more. And then it's like, okay, I'm seeing, wow, I'm really here. Where can I love that here so that I can exude more of this love inside this temple and be more of what I want to be in the world, not what I don't want to be,
Yeah, totally beautiful. And it's funny because I'm also a Hawaiian practitioner. That's my body work I came to, that then took me, like, into the whole tantric field. And in the Hawaiian philosophy, this is called your na'au, your guts. So we always say, follow your guts, listen to your gut intuition. And in Hawaiian, so the heart is called the aloha ohane, or your spirit of your heart. And the mind is called the pilikia, which is like trauma and drama, because it's just looping in the mind, And so what I learned through that study is that all trauma just gets stuck in the tissues, and it's not in the event, but our mind loops in the event. So that's where the embodiment piece is so important, to give us space to move and to release and to breathe into those places that were traumatized, and then to come back to trusting our na'au, or trusting our gut intuition. And they trust that above the heart, because even the heart, you know, we have our heartstrings and our empathy and our, you know, might pull you this way and that way. But when it comes to decisions, you know, for your highest good, if we just realize that the body is life affirming, you know, the body will always choose what's good for it. We didn't become a super species on the planet by, you know, not caring for this body, you know. It's like we were in tune with the body, like the animals were in tune with their bodies, you know, and then we've, you know, been separated from that, being in alignment and in tune with what's good for that path, you know, and trusting our body. So especially for women, like having a womb, and this is what I teach with the Wild Women Awakening, is, you know, the womb is this portal that all life is created in. And so, you know, the whole loving your body as a temple, like we were talking about the temples in here in Bali, you know, we have temples everywhere. When you go into the temple, you take off your shoes, you dress a certain way, you know, you bring offerings. It's like, it's a whole experience in coming into the temple, and it's different than in the everyday life. And so that's the way I like to teach, you know, the around our sexuality, and especially for women and young girls, you know, especially in this day and age where so much is pointing towards them, just like, oh, you know, I can like have 10 lovers, and, you know, and is that really serving the radiance of your womb? And, you know, are those partners that you're choosing to engage with, I mean, that's okay, but are you, you know, are they taking their shoes off at the temple door? Are they honoring you? Are you honoring yourself? Is that an honoring, you know, to the radiance of your heart? Because again, this feminine heart, this radiant heart, you know, so that's what everybody is longing for to feel in the world. And so this connection between the womb and the heart, and listening, deeply listening to your womb. I mean, it's like, if you think of it, you know, your mother grew you inside her womb, inside her body, you know, and she didn't have to think, you know, okay, today we're making his hair red, and then we're, you know, growing eyes today, and oh, we got to make a good brain, and, you know, we're growing arms and hearts and livers, and this complexity of a human being. She might have been watching TV or shopping or driving the car or whatever, and the intelligence of her body grew us, right? So if the universe and trusted women to grow all of life, why do we not trust our own body when we got to make a little decision? You know, when she says no, why do we not? Why do we question that? You know, it's like, it's very clear, you know, or when she says yes, we can trust that, you know, because it's like the body is life affirming. And so that coming home again and again and again to that, you know, how we have all the answers inside our body. We have all the light inside our body. We have all the love inside our body. We have all the nurturing inside our body, and it's just getting this mind back in alignment with the heart, with the womb, with the genitals, with the feet, with the earth, you know? So that laying down on the earth and just saying, yes, Mother, I'm part of you, you are part of me, I'm part of you. Let's dance together.
Let's dance together. Yeah, I love the analogy of all the alignment in that, and I feel, you know, one of the reasons for creating this symposium was to really like give people a healthy, you know, example of a lot of different women, you know, one of many incredible speakers coming in here, of what can healthy, like, feminine leadership look like. And, you know, the world we're in right now, I think we've seen a lot of examples of unhealthy masculine leadership, and a lot of examples of women and female bodies trying to lead in their masculinity, which is unhealthy as well. So, like, the vision with this is, okay, as people come together and there can be a healthy expression of feminine leadership integrated inside, attuned to their womb, receptive in their body, like, what's the world that you kind of envision if that actually can be the case, and women, especially female bodies, because as a man, I look at female bodies to like my own inner feminine, like I want a healthy transmission of feminine leadership, you know, and I'm like selfishly getting that through all these interviews and all these conversations. It's great, you know, and I receive that so much from my own beloved as well. But like, that's the world I'm longing for, where that feminine wisdom and leadership is shifted from a masculine energy, and that's like alive inside of business, inside of creation, inside of all of that. So like, what's that world that you're wanting, or some of your 2 cents around
well,
that?
you know, like even when I've had the, you know, when I'm doing my work, and especially if I'm in a circle of like naked women, like there's nowhere better than to be, you know. I mean, I'm sure you wish you could be a fly on the wall at those ones, you know, but just to look around, and you know, for me it's just like this fragrance of a bouquet of flowers, of, you know, all the different flowers, and you get a group of sisters together and magic just happens. It's like we you know, and you bring one man into the equation, because you know my trainings are for women and men, and quite often I've had all women, like 24 women and 1 man, you know, and I always milk that one masculine, you know, I mean, that one man there. But women behave differently even when there's 1 man present. It's like, you know, it's this, again, this conditioning, you know, and what happens. But you put a group of women together, you know, and when they're really in their hearts and they're really done some work and they're in their bodies, and there's this, you know, lack of competition and comparison, it's just amazing and phenomenal what can happen. And I feel that because whether women choose to have children or not, you know, but we have the ability to birth children, that we're wired for, you know, looking after and nurturing, and for the highest good. You know, we want for our children for the highest good. And so when women fully own this aspect of, you know, these 2 polarities of the masculine and the feminine, and women are allowed to be into like making a decision of what's for the highest good. It's not this greedy, you know, like at the top looking after myself only. It's you know, what is for the highest good, and the co-creation, like when women can co-create really easily together, we can move mountains, and we can totally turn this world around, because we are 51% of the population. So, and I feel that, you know, like when we look at the archetypes of all the different goddesses, and we see the goddess Kali that has been so feared and revered, you know, and you know, in the Indian pantheon, she's pictured, you know, she's chopped off a man's head, it's dripping with blood, she's wearing skulls, she's standing on a baby. I mean, it's just like, who is Kali, you know? And yet she is like, she's chopping off the head of ignorance, and she's like not afraid of death, and she's fierce, you know. And so women have that. I mean, every man who's been with a beloved has seen that, surely at least, you know, once or twice. And that energy is also like that fierceness when women rise up together. And you see it, you know, when there's been marches and protests in the Me Too movement and things, when women fully rise up in their feminine. They're in their feminine, but they're that fierce Kali of no more. We are not going to tolerate this any longer, you know. And that's like, it's coming from a place of, you know, we're going to turn this thing around, where all the men and the little boys are going to get their needs met, and we are not going to have this happening anymore. You know, it's super powerful. And then when, you know, that masculine that can stand in the face of Kali and penetrate her heart again, to bring her back to her heart. In the Bhagavad Gita, she turns from like the wrath of Kali to Pavitra, you know, and the consort, and this beauty and this nature and this dancing woman, and you know, and we bring that forth. And so even seeing in the corporate world, when women come and they, you know, like bring their sexuality and don't dress like a man, like wearing suits and look like men, you know, it's like, well, you've just donned the masculine mask. It's like, no, bring in the beauty. How do we create beauty in this world? We have to have the feminine and the masculine in balance. And I feel like because for 2,000 years we've had this imbalance, you know, and now it's slowly women are starting to awaken, and the feminine inside of men is starting to awaken, because that's the thing that we need to clarify and be really honest about, is that when the repression of the feminine happen, it's not just women,
Mm-hmm.
it's the repression of the feminine. So when you're painting, when you're making love, when you're playing the guitar, you know, that's Shakti moving through you. That's the feminine energy moving through you. And that was repressed for men and for women. And that has been missing in our world, that feminine. And so we've been, if you're in a boat and you only have one oar, you know, and it's the masculine oar, then you're going to go round and round in circles until you're finally going to, you know, spiral downward.
Wow, I'm going in a circle.
Yeah, we're not getting anywhere, you know. So when we bring this feminine oar back in, you know, it's gotta be balanced to what that masculine oar is. And that's what I love about Tantra, of those two principles of Shakti is this life force energy, you know, it's the manifested world, it's like life force energy, and trees don't grow in straight lines. So even our, you know, the masculine of like longing to control, because the masculine is like this Shiva presence, is this pure presence of the self, you know, but then it wants to control this Shakti, you know, that can be chaotic, absolute chaos,
course,
you know, because she might change her mind and make a big change all of a sudden, which, you know, if you're in this structure that we've created in the world, that doesn't go down so well, you know, when, nope, suddenly this is not working, we're going to change everything, because she can see that this is what's needed, and suddenly a tsunami comes through and it destroys everything, and it, you know, but it brings new life. Kali always brings new life. The bushfire rages through and the new life comes, you know, and so we have to be okay with the not knowing, which is what humans don't like. And the masculine, the distorted masculine, has also like wants to have that control all the time, the control, and not be in this like, you know, chaotic feminine energy. But if we can trust it again, like when we look at nature, we see plants, you know, find their way, and, you know, even the from the masculine scientific point of view, they're competing for light. No, they're not. They're harmoniously, you know, all growing together, you know. It's like, look at it differently. It's like, but, you know, each thing is getting its needs met and finding its way and finds a place, and, you know, and swirling around, and there's space and room for everything and for everyone. And then we create a forest, and a forest is like the most beautiful example of the wild, untamed feminine. And you know, what are we doing to the forest right now? We're chopping the forest down and burning them, and, you know, to grow monocrops, you know, and that's not, nature is, you know, that's controlling the feminine. So I always see the metaphor of like what's happening to what has happened to the feminine and what is happening on the earth. They're, you know, they're synonymous. So even we see the, you know, the huge problem we have here in Bali with plastic in the waterways, and, you know, the waterways, the waters, you know, the water is the womb, it's the second chakra. So when the waterways get clogged with plastic because we don't care, it's like, okay, women, where are we not caring about ourselves, our bodies, you know, that no, we are not going to tolerate this. We're going to, you know, rise up and protest that we're not allowed to produce this stuff anymore. You know, it's like this explosion that just happened in Beirut that killed all those people. It was a fertilizer. Well, fertile. If something explodes like that, what the hell are we doing putting it on our food? You know, like to grow food, like it's totally toxic and should never been created, allowed. And that, again, is coming from that distorted control instead of going back to the roots, you know, going back, and that root has to have the feminine, the masculine there, you know, and then we can fly. Then we can, like, you know, go forward when we have these two elements in balance. So that's my greatest dream and desire is, you know, like to do that. I do it in my own little way, in my own little world, but yeah, to see it on a grander, much grander scale, that's always been a dream. I'm a blue planetary storm in the Mayan calendar, so ever since I was a little girl, I've always gone from, you know, the microcosm to looking at the macrocosm, the microcosm, the macrocosm, with everything. So, you know, I mean, when you think of it, here we are on this little tiny speck, you know, hurtling through this vast universe at 800 kilometers per hour, you know, is like, come on, really? Like, you know? So change is inevitable. Struggle is the option. And I feel change is, you know, it's just upon us, it's imminent, and I've been doing this work for 30 years. When I first started doing the women's retreats in Australia, you know, a lot of people thinking, oh, well, Malaika and her woo-woo stuff, you know, and now it's like so common, all this stuff. I'm like, oh, yay, finally, you know,
it's
I
happening.
gave birth to my second son in the water birth in a teepee, you know, and my mother thought I was like, they were going to, thank God I was in Australia, not in Canada. They would have sent around the, you know, the officials to come and grab me and put me in a Looney Tunes bin.
What is wrong with you?
What is
Natural
wrong with you?
birth.
Birthing in a pool, you know.
Yeah,
but now it's
exactly.
normal, right?
Exactly.
So I've seen those changes. I always tell my children, you know, like, oh yeah, I come from an era when, you know, people would light up cigarettes on an airplane, like, you know. We don't do that anymore. So, you know, because we learn. So it's like we are growing and evolving and changing. And, you know, I feel like right now we're being squeezed with what's happening to really find that place inside ourselves, both men and women, and to really feel, you know, we got to come back to feeling, and all this, you know, social distancing and keeping us separate from each other. It's like, no, we need to not, you know, we need to come more into contact with each other and feel each other. So yeah, that's really what I believe and what I feel and what I teach, and I'm looking forward to the symposium, which is going to be a lot of fun. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of it and be part of all these queens.
You're doing great work in the world, and I'm excited to check out the workshop as well. The Wild Woman Awakening is what Malaika will be teaching in the symposium, and yeah, stepping into our full wildness. And I love all the pieces that you've been bringing today, and it's such a joy. The last thing, if you had 3 like very simple deliverable things for self-love and loving the body temple, what are those 3 like nuggets in your back pocket?
To stand in front of the mirror and see all of yourself, stand in front of the mirror naked and look at your body. And, you know, if you've got a pet, have your pet nearby to look at your pet's body and all the love that you love on your pet. Doesn't matter if he's got floppy ears, big ears, losing his hair, whatever. You love that animal. And see yourself in that mirror and go, wow, look at me, this beautiful cat that I am, you know. And then run a hot bath, get into a hot bath and fill it with flower petals, get some rose petals, and, you know, just self massage, just come home into your body, do a prayer of apology for the places in your body that you've judged as not being good enough. I do a lot of that in my work. And to come home to listening to your body. You know, we read books to see what we want to eat these days. You know, it's like, listen to your body. Your body is like millions of years of evolution, all your ancestors. Don't read a book to ask your body what you want, what it needs to eat to be healthy. If you're sick at the moment, if you have a disease or something at the moment, really ask your body, okay, what do I need? And then be willing to give it to her.
Embodied awakening. I love it. I love it.
Embodied awakening, yes.
Thank you so much for...
Thank you.
Thank you for all the wisdom and gifts and the work you've been doing for so long and sharing with people to wake them up. So, amazing woman. Come check her out. Links, all kinds of things below. And thank you for being with us. And we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you.